Young serial entrepreneur David Zamarin, founder and CEO, Detrapel, show 025. For more information on Detrapel, go to Detrapel, that's DETRAPEL.com. We are so happy and excited that Detrapel and founder David Zamarin will be airing on Shark Tank on January 7th, 2018. As you know, Shark Tank, the entrepreneurship reality show that has helped entrepreneurs, we can't wait to watch David on the opening of the show's 10th season. Like the Listenup Show and the Mitchell Chadrow podcast, Shark Tank is a business-themed show and inspires all of us to execute on our business goals. I can't wait to see how David handles the tough, self-made, multi-millionaire and billionaire tycoon shark. The work David has done with Detrapel is a great story to listen up to as others continue their search for investments in the businesses and products that consumers are just waiting for. David is being given such an opportunity by the sharks as he chases the American dream and potentially secures a business deal that could make him the next millionaire. Get the show notes at mitchellchadrow.com/show025. And now, on to the show. Hey, trusted friends, I'm Mitchell Chadrow, your host on this Listen Up Show, where we help you, our loyal listeners, business owners, startup professionals starting something on the side, recent retirees who now want to turn that hobby or passion into a profitable company, students wanting to build something, all while balancing that with family and life. Hey, trusted friends, Mitchell here. This is going to be an awesome show. I first heard about David Zamarin before interviewing Jeremiah Joseph DeLeon in show 023, which you can actually listen up to at mitchellchadrow.com/show023. Jeremiah recommended that I interview this young serial entrepreneur who is now only 18 years of age. He's the founder and CEO of Detrapel, his second startup. David actually sold his first startup, Lick Your Soul, when he was just 15. I then read more about him through different media outlets like Philadelphia Business Journal, CBS Philadelphia, Fox 29 Philly, and more. So I decided to feature him on my Young Serial Entrepreneur series. You may recall I interviewed Scott Pecorella from show 012, founder of No Snow app and Meteorology Optics, at mitchellchadrow.com/show012. Another young serial entrepreneur. Want to learn more about how to start up a business? Sign up for our newsletter and get access to exclusive content, plus a free copy of our ebook, 30 Tools to Start Up. Get my free ebook now. Just head on over to mitchellchadrow.com/signup. That's right, mitchellchadrow.com/signup. On the podcast show, we speak with successful entrepreneurs, private equity investors, nonprofit student leaders, startups that have grown successful businesses, and those serial entrepreneurs that have built iconic brands and have sold their businesses for millions, fintech gurus, app developers, and so much more. Now enjoy the show. What are we going to learn on today's show? We're actually going to cover a lot. Lessons of a young entrepreneur, programs for high school entrepreneurship, David's experience with crowdfunding and crowdsourcing, which we also happen to have covered back in show 015, and how he learned to balance business, fun, and a long list of extracurricular activity. The key to working with mentors and having an outside advisory group. Today's guest, David Zamarin. David, so first about your family. Are your parents also entrepreneurs as well?
Hey, Mitchell. Unfortunately, no, they're not. My mom's actually a civil engineer who went to Drexel University in Philadelphia at the age of 29. Both are immigrants to the U.S. I have never, had any entrepreneurial background before then. Came here with no language, pretty much nothing. My father is a little bit more adverse in the business world, however, still not, in my definition of an entrepreneur, No offense to him, obviously, but he's more involved in finance. He's also starting a sangria company currently, but most of his life, he graduated from LaSalle University in Philly, in finance, went into the stock brokerage, industry, and then, after the stock market crashed in '01, decided to do private residential and commercial mortgaging, and has been doing that with real estate since then. But realistically, they're not entrepreneurs.
And you have brothers and sisters?
I have 2 half-brothers. One is 9, and one is 3.
Our startup round. For all your hosting needs, head on over to mitchellchadrow.com/hosting. mitchellchadrow.com/hosting for all your web hosting needs. Who do you use to host this website? So tell us a little bit about the story about how you got started with Lick Your Soul, and how did the idea actually come to your mind to not only start it, but then turn around and actually sell it at such a young age?
Sure. So I'll actually take you back a little bit before then. In my 6th grade year, I got this idea and decided to take a $100 loan from my father to buy a bunch of Beats and G-Shocks, which were just headphones and watches that were popular. And I decided to sell them at flea markets over the summer. And I made about roughly $10,000 in that one summer, and I split it in half with my dad. And then over the course of the next 2-3 years, when I was in middle school, I was investing the money, and I lost all of it by investing into my friends' ideas or in other ideas that I was trying to pursue. And then came around the time where, I was in 9th grade, and I was in my Spanish class, and I had a flyer passed around that talked about youth entrepreneurship in a program that was in the city at First Round Capital, which is one of the largest VC firms that we have, venture capital firms that we have in America. So immediately kind of caught my attention, and I decided to go ahead and interview for the program because their mantra was start something real, and I was really interested in business. So I interviewed. I got the spot. There was only 20 people accepted out of, I think it was around 2,000 that were interviewed for the specific cohort that I was in. And I went ahead with the program. I was the only freshman at the time. Everyone else was a senior. And I got involved, and they were talking about following your passion and starting a business based on what you like or what you're interested in. And I, was thinking about a lot of different ideas, but then came the time where I started thinking about shoes because I was a sneakerhead at the time for some reason. And I actually got some advice from one of my mentors to start a shoe cleaning company because initially my idea was to actually come up with some kind of spray that could be peeled off whenever it got dirty, but I wasn't a chemical engineer or anything, so I actually had no idea how to do that. So instead I was told to do a cleaning and conditioning company for shoes, and I took a little bit of a pivot on that. Instead, I actually did a cleaning, conditioning, and apparel company for university sports teams' shoes. So every single university team from Temple, Penn, Drexel, and LaSalle, I contracted on a biweekly basis and did their shoes. So that was kind of the main thing that I did for roughly 4 months or so. And I knew that we only had one scalable part of the business, and that was our conditioning service, which once I'll get into it, but it's my company. It's Detrapel's competitor. Pretty much what we did was we bought this water and stain repellent online that used nanotechnology to spray on shoes. And what we would do was, we would pretty much service these athletes' shoes, or this was the idea was, to kind of spray them, and it would cause a repellency factor for up to a whole year. But I waited about 4 months, the entire duration of me having the company. I waited to get the product. I ordered it online. I paid $600 for the product itself. Then it was $1,000 additional for equipment, like a full respirator mask, bodysuit, gloves, and even specialized plastic from that company. And I actually never understood why I needed all those things up until the moment where I actually had to call them and ask them for a private label agreement, thinking that it would speed things up. However, they denied me because I was making way under $1 million. And I was, just sitting there and thinking about what was the next idea, pretty much what I was going to do, because I knew this was the only scalable part of the business. And luckily, I actually had an opportunity. Somebody came to me and offered to buy out the company, and I took it. I took it right away. I kind of ran with it. I made a decent amount during the 4 months. We were making really good revenue, and I decided to sell it. And then came around the time where we were in a position where, like 2 weeks later, I was thinking, okay, what's my next move? And I thought about it, and I started doing research on nanotechnology and specifically my competitor's product. And I realized that when I went on their safety data sheets online, that it caused cancer and birth defects. So it was very harmful. It actually dried off white and ruined fabric. So it's kind of like a blessing in disguise. I actually never got the opportunity to use it. And then came the time where, I was starting to do research about, like I said, 2 weeks after this whole process, after I sold the company, and started researching nanotechnology, saw what is known as a lotus leaf, which is a natural occurrence in nature. And I pretty much just bought a leaf online, decomposed it in my school lab, took about 3 weeks or so, 2 weeks, came up with 99% of the formula, took it to a lab in Fort Lauderdale, and they added a 1% proprietary part.
So let's unpack a lot of that, because that's a lot of information for a lot of people out there listening to. I mean, this is all being done by someone at that particular point in time who was 15, 16, not even 17 years of age, correct?
Yeah, I was 15 when I sold the first company. I was still 15 when I incorporated Detrapel.
Sure. So let me just ask you a quick question, because we talk a lot about not only having a business idea, not only executing on that business, but having a plan to sort of bring in revenue, so sales distribution. And I know you talked a little bit about your private label agreement that didn't necessarily go through, and that might have been a challenge initially. But tell us a little bit about, because I'm really curious about how you actually then approached Temple and Penn and Drexel and some of the other universities local here to Philadelphia, and actually got them to sign on so that you can create some revenue before selling it at a profit.
Sure. So obviously going through such a large organization, private institution or even public, takes a lot of time. So we actually bypassed that. We didn't actually get direct contracts with these universities. What we did was I found friends that were associated with sports teams or just knew the managers of sports teams, and went directly to those managers or the players and asked them to sign on as a team. So, it was a contractual basis that wasn't done through the school, but rather the teams themselves. And that way we bypassed the whole procurement process of going with the universities and actually being sponsored by them. The teams essentially just pay for it, not the university.
And so in talking about sales and structuring various sales agreements, distribution channels and different distribution sales agreements that you might have, we had spoke to the people that had started Barefoot Wines and had sold that, and one of the things that they had talked about in that episode was the importance of having sales and a sales distribution network. So how did you compensate these friends, and how did you enter these various contracts? I mean, what resources did you use to, develop the contracts and to sort of structure, the arrangement that you had with your friends to cut them in on any of the revenue that was going to be shared?
Sure. So I think it was around my 8th grade year. My mom's always pushed a really studious vibe on me. My parents always wanted me to go, into school, and that's why I ended up going. I always had a kind of a studious background. I was always taking school seriously, and so it came around the time where I think it was 8th grade or so. I was applying to the high school that I went to, which was it was a conjunction to my middle school. You had to reapply though to get in, because it was a public school, but it was a special admission magnet school. And so I ended up doing internships every single year after my 8th grade year. I did about 4 internships a year, specifically with law firms, because I thought I was going to be actually an attorney growing up, because that's what I wanted to do my whole life. And I actually, did that. I learned how to write contracts. I learned a lot of contract law through the attorney that is still currently my attorney, my startup attorney, and he taught me a lot and showed me a lot of the ropes. So I actually wrote a lot of the contracts myself, or I got standard contracts. The first maybe 3 or 4 I got for free, because being a kid, you could use that to your advantage. Or just in general, being a startup, you can use that to your advantage. There's always a lot of ways to make deferral payments. And, I decided to do that. I decided to talk to people and actually get, let them hear my story and take a liking in me. And from there, I, used those resources and tried asking friends or whoever to put me in contact with other people, and specifically with friends. What I would do is I would just give them commission for those kinds of sales. So I know one of my friends specifically for Temple University got me the basketball team, and that basketball team also went to the football team, and it just kept going on from there. It actually spiraled. But initially I compensated him just for the basketball team, and then I ended up compensating him for the other teams as well, because there was this connection in the very beginning. And all I had to do was just I offered him 15% of the net profit, which was for us a decent amount anyway. Our margins were fantastic. So, that's something that was easy for us to do. The contracts were not hard to write. I had something to go off of. and then I, put my own spin on it in ninth grade. I didn't know necessarily the most legal knowledge or didn't have the best vocabulary, but it was definitely sufficient enough for what I needed to do.
Now we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs about starting their business, whether they want to form an S corporation or an LLC, or if they're just going to obviously do a sole proprietorship or the like. And so with Lick Your Soul, what type of entity was that? And given the fact that you were underage, how did you arrange for those, whether you incorporated or whether it was an LLC? How did you actually form that?
Yeah, so Lick Your Soul is a limited liability company, and so has every other company that I've ever owned. I'm actually on a few now, but I've always made my structures LLCs simply because that's what I'm comfortable with. However, I think people need to understand that first and foremost, if you're by yourself in a business, if you're the only equity owner, your LLC is actually going to, for tax purposes, act as a sole proprietorship. So that's something to make sure that you understand. And there's obviously different reasons why each corporation should be whatever they choose to be. We personally decided to be an LLC, or I personally decided that simply because I thought it was the most flexible structure that would fit for my company's needs at the beginning. We may or may not be transitioning. I'm not sure yet. However, I think it's also important for us to understand, or for just people in general to understand that, when you're underage, there's not too many difficulties actually. So what I did was, in terms of incorporating in the state of Pennsylvania, I was legally allowed to do that even though I was underage. The only thing I needed legal backing for, or just backing in general from anyone that was over 18 or 21, was signatures on contracts. So most of the time, I had a co-signer which was like, for example, my mentors. My mentors really built everything for me in the sense that, like, they helped me learn all the ropes, and because of them, I was able to start everything. So in the sense, in the beginning, they actually helped me out in that way too. I used them as co-signers for certain contracts and stuff like that.
And you had met these mentors through the Startup Corporation high school program here in Philadelphia?
Yeah, it's currently called Schoolyard Ventures, actually. They changed their name. But I went through that program. That was the program that I went through my freshman year, and I stayed with them until my junior year. But that company, or that organization rather, because it is a nonprofit, is definitely something I would recommend to any high school entrepreneur, or any entrepreneur for that matter as well, because you can learn a lot just being a mentor through that group as well.
Our startup round. Students, business owners, those individuals out there who want to start up something new, they need a presence online, and they need a web hosting company that they can trust and they can count on, and that's reliable and helpful. So what did I do? I teamed up with the good folks at Hosting, where they offer my podcast audience 25% off their web hosting package. Check them out at mitchellchadrow.com/hosting. That's mitchellchadrow.com/hosting. Start your plan today. Talk to us a little bit about the challenges that you faced in your first startup, and also the decline of your private label agreement, and how you kind of went into Detrapel. So can you talk to us a little bit about this new opportunity? I mean, you've already kind of explained to us about the technology, but just maybe go into a little bit more in depth in terms of the challenges or the setbacks that you learned about, and how that's helped you with Detrapel, going forward and today.
Sure. So some of the biggest mistakes we made were anticipating the wrong markets in the beginning, which is fine. Like, every company's going to go through that. You're going to learn what's best for your company later on. But initially, we actually launched the company with, for example, we did a trial run in the store in Philadelphia with no labels, small bottles that were fat and ugly, that we sold for $25, and we sold out in a week. So we had great, we had a good run on it. However, when we actually had a physical launch, we went straight to the B2C market as well as the B2B, but mostly focused on the B2C market, which was great. And we made, in about the 8 months that we're actually running that, about $80,000. So it wasn't a bad business. It wasn't a bad market for us. However, I guess what I learned from that aspect is, one, retail is ridiculously hard. And I think that it depends on, you have to be ready to be actually doing that. It is capital intensive if you want it to be. It doesn't have to be. It depends on how you structure your business and what kind of retailers you go for. And I also think that you have to be worried that it's a lot harder to convince multiple people to buy a product as opposed to just a business or just someone who needs it, that you think needs it at least. And so I think for us, when I was thinking about the whole scenario, about, I think, 8 months down the line, I had my manufacturer out of Fort Lauderdale actually declare bankruptcy and refuse to disclose the 1% proprietary part to us. So there was a huge issue with that process for the last, year and a half. It took us six different labs as well as overseas labs to try and help us out until I got on the lab by myself this summer and figured it out this spring, actually.
I mean, most people in their 40s or 50s would have found this to be an overwhelming challenges, and yet you overcame them by constantly continuing to try to find a manufacturer. I think you mentioned the number of manufacturers that you actually went through. So how did you have that type of resolve? Where do you find that type of strength and fortitude to kind of find a solution and kind of move forward?
Well, I think it definitely takes a lot of grit. That's definitely one thing that I think every entrepreneur needs to have. At the time, my scenario was a little bit different because at the same time that we were doing B2C, we actually did B2B. And at the time when we lost our manufacturer, we ended up buying products from overseas that were very similar but a lot worse in quality and didn't do exactly as they were supposed to. But we, the companies that were buying from us didn't care about that. They needed the initial effect, and that's what worked for them. So we sold that to them, and we actually made it a 7-figure business within a year. So, I mean, it worked for us in the sense that, we were able to pivot our market and pivot our resources to using other companies and other manufacturers to fulfill the issues that we had. And then on top of that, to make matters even better, it's really all about hustle and believing in what you do. I truly believe in what I do. I love what I do, and I think that it's something that needs to happen. And even though my future plans might be going in one way or another, I still believe that something like this is something, where I specialize in business development. Development is something that I like. I enjoy doing what I do, and I think that in general, I think something like this, you can always find solutions to problems. I mean, that's what entrepreneurs are supposed to do. If there's a problem in your business, I think you're supposed to solve that. And yeah, I think there's certain times in a business where you have to know when to get out and when it's time to kind of close. However, I still think that it's very important as an entrepreneur to be able to fight through certain issues and problems. Had, for example, I not had the B2B side of the business and I didn't see the potential in this business, if I didn't think this could be an 8-figure business, then I probably would have given up. But I believe in it. And I believe that it's all in our power as people or entrepreneurs to solve the issues that we have at hand. So I think because of that, I was able to kind of get through those issues.
The reason why I chose books, sponsor my fast pitch round, that's easy. I love books, and books is owned by a powerful company that stands behind all their products, was willing to offer an exclusive free 30-day trial to my podcast listeners with one free audiobook download. Any listener doesn't like their books, exchange it, and you can cancel at any time. Keep your free download, and you can choose from over 180,000 bestsellers, new releases, classics, and more. I recommend The Last Lecture by Randy Posh. So dream big, get inspired, and listen up. Go on over to mitchellchadrow.com/books. Again, head on over to mitchellchadrow.com/books. It's your number one resource for books. We've talked a little bit about Lick Your Soul in terms of how you were able to use friends to get into the various universities and establish deals that way. So you mentioned that Detrapel has now been a 7-figure grossing revenue product. So how were you able to get into not only the B2B stores or the industrial base, but also get into the various consumer retail space as well? How have you been able to develop that and get into those distribution channels?
So we actually launched the B2C platform again earlier this week. However, this entire time we were doing B2B, as I mentioned, and I think for us, initially, it was all about my connections, all about networking. I think one of my strongest skills is definitely networking. I love to network. I love to meet people. I love helping people, connecting them with people I think that they may need. And I believe that, in the future, I will get that back one way or another. And so because of that, I actually was able to establish a lot of connections early on because a lot of people took me seriously. And I believe that's because I presented myself seriously, obviously. But I think it's very important as a young entrepreneur specifically that you need to present yourself in a way that is diplomatic as well as, just respectable. And just in general, you need to be trustworthy and able to fulfill the promises that you make, or just even fulfill the things that you say. So I think because of that, I was able to build a lot of great connections early on, and then it built on from there. And then once I got press, I got a lot of great organizations behind me. Always had an extensive list of advisors and mentors, personally, that haven't even taken equity, but sit on my board without any equity, and just in general that, advise me on any kind of basis, anytime I need them, any moment I need them, anytime, still without taking any equity. And I think that's important to mention just because I think it's all about building relationships in life, and definitely helps out in business specifically. So
Detrapel, in terms of a structure, is similar in structure as Lick Your Soul. It's a LLC, sole member here in Pennsylvania, correct?
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about some of your actual client, if you could, and the law firm or the attorney that you're actually working with, because I think that people out there who are looking for those types of resources, I think, and it sounds as if you like to be helpful to others, I think that would be very helpful to especially other young entrepreneurs who are looking to obviously do the same and take their business to the next level.
Sure. So, personally, I think it depends on who you need, but my startup attorney is Lee Schlamowitz. He's specifically in Philadelphia and PA. I know he does the surrounding regions as well. But I also use different companies all the time. We're backed by Saul Ewing, which is a large regional firm. They have an office in Philadelphia, and I know they're based in many other places as well. But they're a big firm, and they back us as a startup as well.
Who do you work with there?
Debbie Spranger.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, so she's the head of a specific program that they have there called RAMP, which is it's pretty much an accelerated program for startups. We're in that. We get deferred legal fees from there. And in terms of companies that I've reached out to, we've worked with Rastelli Global, which is a food distributor. We've worked with different kinds of companies in terms of like casinos, or just in general carpet companies, carpet cleaners, carpet manufacturers, textile manufacturers throughout the entire U.S. There's many different markets that a lot of people actually don't know that we're in, but it's actually a lot more in depth than most people think.
Are you allowed to talk to us a little bit about some of those major clients that you do have in terms of not only who they might be, but actually how you went about systematically getting them as clients?
Sure. In general, like I mentioned, Rastelli Global was probably the first one I actually ever had. Again, brought through a mentor. And, we worked with directly the president actually, and he loved the product and stuff like that. So, we actually had our contract pretty much based in the sense that they sprayed on stainless steel because he had some antimicrobial properties, in the product. And it actually, was used in the process of transporting meat because the blood had to be sanitized all the time, but this way they have to just wipe it down so it saves time and cost. And just in general, we've worked with other companies such as textile companies. Those I'll probably not name simply because I know that there's a lot of people in this industry that are trying to get into these types of areas. But at the same time, I'm very confident that we would never, get beaten by a different competitor just because our product is very proprietary and we have a good one. But I think I wouldn't even be allowed to mention them regardless because they're just manufacturers for larger companies. Such as, I can mention the companies that they manufacture for, such as Under Armour, Victoria's Secret, stuff like that. But they're here in the U.S. I know you had mentioned having issues with your outside manufacturer, correct? When you lost the private label and then you were looking for someone else to help you manufacture the product, correct? Well, we didn't have a private label. I actually invented the product. This is my product that we've been using. We just had a manufacturer that was contracted for us. As a contract manufacturer in Fort Lauderdale. That's the one that I lost due to bankruptcy, due to their bankruptcy, and they refused to release that 1% proprietary part. And I was using pretty much a private label, from overseas. Those are the guys that I left as soon as we got our own product because their product wasn't that great anyway.
Graphic designer sponsors the wrap-up round. I needed help with my graphics for all my social media. So if you head on over to mitchellchadrow.com/graphic designer. So tell us a little bit about then protecting your patent on Detrapel. Who helped you file that, and talk to us a little bit about moving, what happened, I guess, in the interim with the consumer market that now you're kind of back in. I mean, obviously that kind of goes to the issues that you were having before, but maybe tell us a little bit about that as well.
So in the original formula that we had with the original lab out of Fort Lauderdale, we had a provisional. Currently, we don't have any patent, and I don't think we're going to pursue one either, simply because we make the type of silica blend that we have inside the formula, and that's just proprietary to us and to our lab. Because now it's actually our lab. It's not just a contracted manufacturer. We have a facility space out of North Carolina that we use, and we've contracted nanotechnology chemists to work out of there. So that's where we're at in that case.
But that's an outside vendor. That's not your own lab, correct?
We actually have the space. It's our space. It's not an outside vendor. It's us.
So it's actually you. You've actually hired employees to obviously do that inside, correct?
Yeah, pretty much. So we've contacted a lab that has contracted their employees to be pretty much like sub-employees for us, subcontractors for us to just work on it. But we have the formula. We have everything else. We own all the proprietary information and everything like that.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, so how many employees do you have, or are they independent contractors?
Sure. I guess with a combination of everything, including part-time and full-time, it's 9 of us. But, in terms of founders' equity or actually equity in general, right now it's currently only me. However, I'm trying to bring on people like Jeremiah, and just other people in general because I think they see the same vision that I see, and we think that together we can bring this to the amount of revenue that we think it deserves, and then from there, potentially have an exit as well, or just leave it as a lifestyle business and have a manager take it from there.
Yeah, so what's your advice to teenagers now who say they want to start their own business or have an idea? Sounds as if you really want to help, you want to give back. So what are some of the key things that you would tell them to start doing?
Sure. So I mentor at a few different programs, and I believe that some of the biggest things that we need to do as entrepreneurs, as teen entrepreneurs specifically, is get actually started. Everyone says they want to be wealthy. Everyone says they want to be successful. Everyone says they want to own a business. Everyone says that they want to be an entrepreneur because that's kind of the fad right now. But the difference is the people that are actually destined to do it are the ones that take that leap of faith and take the risk and actually do it. Because it does take a lot out of you. It is a risk. It's a huge risk. Don't get me wrong. Many people aren't meant to do this. However, those that truly believe that they are need to just pull the plug and really do it. So I think the first thing is really just get started. Get started on your idea. You don't even need to incorporate right away. Do some market research, get the surveys out, ask friends and family, and even people that you don't know on the street whether or not your idea is something that people would buy, or something, if say, for example, you're not selling to people and it's a service, or maybe it's just strategically for industrial companies, then ask companies. Ask companies if this is something that they would buy, or just people on the street. I think it's important to obviously, number one, get customer feedback and be pretty much, you're working for the customer. The customer is buying from you. You're not buying from the customer. There's a reason why you have to satisfy them. And that reason is because they're the people that should matter the most to you in business. So if it makes any sense at all to start a business, you should probably ask the people who you're going to be selling to what they think first. So I think it's very, very important to get some market research done when you are trying to start a company or just trying to do anything in general that has to do with business and requires you to start selling.
We talked a little bit about crowdfunding and crowdsourcing, and I know that we had a show on that back on our show 015, and I know that you had mentioned about earning $10,000 before Lick Your Soul, and then you sold Lick Your Soul. You made some money there. I know you had indicated that your first batch of products cost you about $80,000, and we really didn't go into any detail in terms of how you came. I'm sorry?
We sold worth $80,000 worth in the first 8 months.
How did you create? So in terms of the money that you used to obviously not only create the product but pay people to obviously develop the product and put it in the the bottles to get it out there. How did you basically fund all of that? Was that through all the money that you had made prior in your prior businesses? Yeah.
So actually, like I had mentioned before, another thing I actually didn't mention is I grew up very, very poor, so because my parents were immigrants, so I had a very big sense of independence from an early age on. Didn't have any help from family or just, my family obviously did everything for me that they could, but it wasn't what I needed to start a business, for example. Never took out any loans or anything like that. Started with $100, made some money off that, lost it, like I said. And when I started with Your Soul, I think it took me another 100 or two just to buy supplies and get started from there. But I think a big misconception in entrepreneurship is people who don't have money think you need money to start a business, and people who have money think it's too hard, right? And so I think coming from someone who started multiple businesses with barely any money, I think it's actually very doable. It's definitely obviously going to take longer to get more successful along the way, but that's all part of the process. And I think, it's all in your hands. For example, I think that if you are about to start a business, you only need a few $100s. You don't necessarily need to incorporate, like I said, right away. You don't necessarily need to have, depending on the business again, like, for example, liability insurance, right? That's something that you can buy after the first 200 trusted people have bought your product, right? So I think it's very, very important to be able to utilize and save your funds that you make from the business immediately. So what we do is, and what I've done actually, is I put all the money that I made from my prior businesses into Detrapel, and from there, especially from Make Your Soul, because we made a decent amount on that, and I sold that, and I used all the money into Detrapel, wasted a lot in many different aspects, like, for example, paying for a $3,000 website in the very beginning, that didn't even work, right? So there was a lot of things that we blew money for that did not deserve to have that kind of money put in the beginning anyway. But nonetheless, we did that. That was a great lesson to learn, and I definitely wouldn't do that again. And instead, what we did was, every single penny that still comes in through this day, through Detrapel, is reinvested back into the company. Because if you want your company to grow as fast as possible, you need to reinvest all your money into it. I don't take a salary. Anything that I've ever bought, I buy it with obviously my own money. I did start I started another company rather, and just got named the COO of a different company. But I started a second company to kind of supplement my cash flow that I wanted to live with, so that I could reinvest all the money that's coming in from Detrapel back.
So you might have already covered this, but so what do you tell somebody who thinks that they need to do some crowdfunding? I mean, it might be for some people, but it might not necessarily be for others. And I think that what you've just indicated is very instructive in terms of realizing that you could do more with less than what you might think. But so what is your overall feeling then about crowdfunding?
That's a good question. I believe crowdfunding is definitely subjective to different entrepreneurs. I think, personally, I did a crowdfunding campaign with Detrapel when we needed money to find a new manufacturer. We got a venture capital offer along the way that was way beyond the money that we wanted for the crowdfunding campaign, and we started the diligence process. Although I never took that venture capital offer, that offer was on the table, so I canceled the Indigo campaign that we were doing, and because of that was the reason why we actually didn't get fully funded.
But how many entrepreneurs with even more experience would have had the mindset, the focus to obviously not take that? Because I think that most people would be like, wow, this is really what I want. And you were able to basically say, no, this is not really what I want. This is more than what we were looking for, and actually turned it down. Where does that come from? How did you, I mean, at such a young age, how did you develop that?
You have to really just learn how to take risks, in my opinion. I think it's very important to understand the process of business, and everything that you do in life, but specifically businesses, is a risk because you're putting everything out online. Being a young entrepreneur specifically, I think it's even better in my scenario or any young entrepreneur scenario to take that risk at an early age because you have things to fall back on. So at the end of the day, even though my parents aren't wealthy or my parents aren't necessarily backing me, I knew that if anything were to happen, I could always rely on my parents. Or, I'd always be okay. My expenses aren't, I don't have a mortgage. I don't have a car that I'm financing. I don't have any of that. So for me, I'm not going to be in a position where I'm losing money, if anything goes wrong. And I think most entrepreneurs forget about that because there are resources such as parents or just in general other things that you can do to kind of fill empty space that you may have when you're about to take a risk and you're scared to do so. So I think you just have to learn how to take risks and really understand that if you're not going to take a risk, you're not going to get the reward. If you're not going to take that leap, you're not going to make the jump. You know what I mean? So
sure.
There's no possibility of you succeeding if you're not even going to take the chance to do so. And if you get that in your mind, I think if you instill that mentality, you'll understand that you have to do it. There's no other way around it.
We stated before that the podcast is all about balancing business and family and life. So as a young person involved with school and you have business, and obviously we talked a little bit about your family and their influence on you as well. How do you balance all of that? How do you balance your school and your relationships and your family and your work? I mean, you're 18 years of age. I mean, I remember when I was 18. So how do you do it?
I mean, it's all about prioritization and time management. I learned how to manage my time very early on because the school that I went to, even from middle school, that same school that I went to high school, but the magnet school that I went to, it was a 50-minute commute one way, and I had to commute, from 6 in the morning. I would wake up, I would be on the train by 6:45, and I would be home usually around midnight actually, because I was doing, like my freshman year of high school, for example, I did 12 different clubs. I did robotics, debate, literally everything that I could possibly dabble into to find what I personally love. It took a lot of my time, but I was willing to make those kinds of sacrifices, and I think the time management and prioritization thing is a big thing of life, and I think I'm a big opponent of people who say that you need to have a work hard, play hard balance, especially at a young age, because I don't believe in that. I believe that if you truly want to be successful, in whatever your definition of success is, because it doesn't necessarily have to be money, but if you really have that idea in your mind, in that mindset that you really need to be successful, you want to be successful, then you need to put in that time, because there's nobody else that's going to do it for you. I for example, in high school, and even to this day, I don't party. I never really had that opportunity to do so. I've never been in that position. Not that I haven't had the opportunity. I choose not to have that opportunity. I choose not to do it. I choose not to be in that scenario. I've never, I've played sports my entire life. I was on a club team, on a national team. I mean, I've done personally a lot of different things and followed my passions to the point where, for example, I don't believe when you are an entrepreneur that what you're doing is work. I don't believe it's a job. So, it's a passion. It's something that you love to do. And if you have a passion for something, you're going to do it no matter what. It's going to fuel you. You're going to be excited to do what you love. So when I play sports, I love playing sports, so I'm excited. When I'm doing anything that has to do with my businesses, I'm out of the roof excited because I love that stuff. I love entrepreneurship and everything that revolves around it. So I think, once you find what you love and what you truly believe in has to be there, or what you say has to really match what you do. And because of that, I think you need to learn how to prioritize your time. I never went to social outings that much. I'd rather socialize with older people and develop relationships that I knew would last me forever. And that's not saying that I didn't have friends in high school. I was definitely one of the more known kids in high school, but at the same time, I didn't have time to go out on the weekends. I was an athlete, and I also, was running full-time businesses. So, and then again, I also did mock trial and debate throughout my entire 4 years. I did so many different activities. I think it was just important for me to understand that I didn't have free time in the sense that I didn't have time to just lay down on my phone and watch Facebook videos or Snapchat videos or anything like that. I have social media, but I know a lot of my friends, for example, that claim that they want to be successful would rather sit and waste 20 minutes watching some stupid Facebook video as opposed to getting out there and making a call that they didn't need to make that day and just forgot to do so. Go ahead. I was just going to mention.
I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
I was going to mention how essential it is to find what works for you and keep doing that. So, for example, for me, I use my Apple Calendar religiously. I use whiteboards. I have 3 whiteboards hanging in my dorm room right now. And on top of that, I still have my laptop. I still have my notes on my phone. And, like I said, the calendar that I use. And I use different apps like Trello to keep all my things together. And, you just have to be innovative and find what works for you and stick with it.
You're the youngest entrepreneur that we've had so far on the Listen Up podcast, and I say this with all respect. You sound like you're way beyond your years, of course, and you're like an old soul. And I do a lot of estate planning with all different types of people, from their teenage years all the way up into their 90s. I've had clients that are over 100, and so I kind of ask this question, even though you're a young person, because I'm very impressed with you and I think that you can handle it. So let's talk about legacy and how legacy is important to you at such a young age. What type of legacy do you want to leave?
Yeah, definitely. I thought about this more recently. actually, just because my life has kind of taken a different toll, where I've kind of transitioned into a personal brand now. As you saw, I've been on quite a lot of different media outlets, so I do have some things to uphold. And with that being said, I recently really sat down and thought about what legacy I want to leave and what that is. Right? So I think I'm actually the last Zamarin in my family. My dad and I are the last two that are alive right now. And so I think, for me, it's more than just my name at this current moment. It's more about leaving an impact and really understanding, or not understanding, but rather kind of proposing to the entire world and to young kids specifically, young people specifically, especially the ones that are impoverished or just in general not in the best scenarios, because you could be a wealthy kid and still not be in the best scenarios either. But I want to leave a legacy about specifically catered towards starting your life early. I don't think there's time to have play and there's time to be a kid. Don't get me wrong. I'm still a kid at the end of the day. And I still do kid things. I still make mistakes, but at the end of the day, I want something, I'll go and get it now instead of waiting 2, 3 days, 5 years, whatever it has to be. Start on your life as early as you possibly can. Because there's nobody out there that's going to be focusing on you or helping you or doing anything for you better than you can yourself.
Well, I know that your goal is a huge push for youth entrepreneurship, and I think that, if everybody in the audience, from kids that are in high school to college and those that are obviously older and looking to sort of transition into entrepreneurship, I think there's a lot of wisdom in what you've been talking about. Our fast pitch, MitchellChadrow.com/books for books, audio books, guest recommendations, and the books that I read to start up each day. Sponsors our fast pitch, my book club recommendations, back at MitchellChadrow.com/books. To see more of my recommendations and recommendations of our guests, just go to MitchellChadrow.com/books. It's your number one resource for book reviews and recommendations. Some really quick questions, supposed to be fun, and also kind of go a little bit more in depth in terms of who you are as a person. So our first question in this fast round, David, you're ready, right?
Yep.
Perfect. Best business advice that you have ever received?
Sure. Time is my most valuable asset.
And the next is our Audible inspirational book, which is sponsored by MitchellChadrow.com/Audible. Name a book that has either helped you in business, family, or life that's really inspired you and will help others.
The Education of Millionaires by Michael Ellsberg.
What one thing contributes most to your success?
This is actually also a book, but if anyone wants to read it, I think this is a great one too, and it contributes to my success. It's this mentality called The Power of Broke. There's a specific book by Damon John that just came out that's named by this. And that mentality, I think, is what really helped my success.
How about a fun fact about you that maybe not a lot of people know about, but maybe it would tell a lot of people something additional about you other than just your business acumen?
Sure. I am absolutely in love with soccer. I play soccer religiously. I've played club my whole life, and as well as state teams, state select teams, and I've played on showcase teams that were regional champions and even have made national tournaments.
How about your worst advice that's being given to young entrepreneurs today?
What's that? Sorry.
The worst advice being given to young entrepreneurs today.
Yeah, I would probably say that the worst advice is that you need money to start a business.
Mm-hmm. And when you think of the word successful, what first name comes to your mind?
Wow. I haven't been asked this one before. I'd probably say Mark Cuban.
Okay. And 2 years from now, what are...
a lot, so that's why.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Look up him a lot.
2 years from now, what are you doing?
2 years from now, what am I doing? Hopefully being on the verge to sell the company, as well as in my third and hopefully final year of college. I'm trying to finish early.
Cool. Where are you going right now?
I'm at Babson.
Okay. And what are you studying? What are you doing?
Entrepreneurship. It's an all business, so it's everyone gets a degree in business administration, but you get to concentrate on different things, and I'm trying to do 3 concentrations. So.
Yeah, no, super. As we say goodbye, I have a few additional sponsors, but I certainly want to find out how we can all obviously not only keep in contact with you, but I'm going to ask you to basically at the end of the show wrap up and tell everybody the 3 major lessons, the 3 major takeaways that everybody can sort of take away from this show today. It would be so helpful to us, and we would really appreciate it. And MitchellChadrow.com/books. I know David has already given us a number of great books that you can obviously get at MitchellChadrow.com/books. Like I said, I love books. David, it sounds like you really love books as well, correct?
Correct.
Our wrap-up round, MitchellChadrow.com/photos for all your graphic design needs. David, now how can people keep in contact with you? And then as we leave the show, maybe we can wrap up and the 3 major lessons learned from today's show.
Sure. So the best way to keep in contact with me is any way through my public social media outlets, such as Twitter or Facebook. Preferably not Facebook. That's more private nowadays. But any of my Detrapel links or my personal links, which just all have to do with my name. You could follow me on almost anything that's at David Zamarin or at Detrapel. Or just email through our website, through Detrapel.com. You can find the email. And
now let's listen up to David as he summarizes the 3 main points. So are you ready, David?
Yep.
Number 1.
Okay. Number 1, start as early as you can.
Number 2.
Take as many risks as you can.
And number 3.
Be sure to know what you really want.
David, this has been awesome. I've really enjoyed it quite a bit. I'm really thankful that you came on to the show, and I really do know that there's a lot of people out there that are going to really use all the wisdom that you've provided us today. So I want to thank you very much. I'm really excited to find out how you're doing, and we're certainly going to keep in contact with you. So again, thanks so very much.
Thank you, Mitchell. Thanks so much.
Hey, you take care now. Be good now.
You too.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
To listen up to our last show with Zephan Moses Blacksburg and get the show notes and resource links, go to MitchellChadrow.com/show024. We're all about entrepreneurship here on the Listen Up Show. We've talked about so many different resources because we're really big on resources for entrepreneurs out there. I'm actually going to have not only all the notes for today's show, but any links to any of the companies that we've actually talked about. You'll actually be able to find that back at MitchellChadrow.com/show025. Until next time. Subscribe to my email list at MitchellChadrow.com/signup. You will get all the full interview transcripts, my ebook, 30 Tools to Start Up, where I talk about these free resources in show 006. You'll get the startup checklist, education and training materials, and other resources just by signing up at MitchellChadrow.com/signup. Back at MitchellChadrow.com/signup, help me boost the rankings of the Listen Up Show, the Startup Entrepreneur Podcast, by providing a well-written review in iTunes. MitchellChadrow.com/iTunes. It helps other people find the show. If you actually need instructions on how to do this, you can find that back at MitchellChadrow.com/signup. Thank you so much for subscribing to my email list and providing a written review on iTunes.